Hi everybody, welcome back to the Growing Revolution. We've got a really awesome episode here. We have a general cannabis veteran and smart pot veteran, Dustin Fraser, here with us today. We are actually on location at his dispensary in beautiful Oklahoma City. So thanks for having us here, Dusty.
Oh, my pleasure. My pleasure. Good to be here.
Yeah, this is going to be a fun episode, I can already tell. So when I first met you, you were living in Covelo, California, which is a really neat outpost for anybody that's never been there. Can you kind of talk about Covelo and what the culture is like there?
Well, the culture in Covelo is definitely cannabis related. It's a small town in the middle of the Emerald Triangle, Mendocino County, hour and a half from any major city, and it's just kind of a majestic place up in the woods. The setting is a beautiful round valley, and people have been growing cannabis there since the 70s and before. There's a lot of reservation, there's a lot of agriculture, so we got cowboys and Indians mixed with hippies and everybody else who was lured to the cannabis culture, especially during the early 2000s as medical changed in California, as the medical industry, bloomed out there.
What's the population there? It's pretty small, right?
I believe the population's about 1,500, but during cannabis trim season, it blooms up to about 4,500. So there's a lot of swinging fluctuation there.
Yeah, absolutely. So kind of going in rewind a little bit, when were you first exposed to cannabis and what did it do for you?
Well, I was exposed to cannabis when I was a child, and some of my earliest memories is, I remember the smell of cannabis. And I remember when I smelled cannabis, everybody was getting along in the household. There was, everybody was happy and there was no fussing or fighting. Now, when there wasn't any cannabis smell around, it wasn't always so easy going. So my earliest experiences were my parents smoking and getting along great when they did.
Yeah. It's funny, looking back on my own childhood, I remember smelling something coming from the basement, when my dad was watching me. And I'd be like, what's that smell, Dad? And he's like, oh, I'm just burning the end of some rope, just sealing off the end. And I was like, oh, okay. And then as I got older, I realized, what the heck was really going on. So as far as cultivation goes, like when did you start doing that? And how was your setup? Was it indoors, outdoors?
I started experimenting with cultivation when I was around 14, 15 years old, and that was taking some bag seed, out of some cannabis I found and dragging it into the woods and, packing water and packing soil. So my first experience in cultivation was definitely outside, in the woods.
Guerrilla.
Yeah, the places where I used to hide to smoke out. So.
Nice. And how did that go? Was it successful or?
Not for the first 3 or 4 times I tried,
Yeah.
Mostly failure rate.
Yep.
until medical came about and you could comfortably do it in the backyard. I had a couple successful guerrilla grows, but most of them were a lot of work for minimal return without the knowledge of, getting it to the finish point.
Yeah. Without the knowledge of really how to steer the plant and give it what it needs when it needs, you're almost flying blind a little bit.
Ended up smoking more leaves and undeveloped buds than anything else, but it was all a learning experience.
Awesome. So as far as I know, you're one of the first people to use smart pot planters for cannabis. How did you first come across smart pots, and what did you notice for your plants?
I first came across the product in the Department of Agriculture in Mendocino County. I was filling out a producer certificate for my small organic farm. And I found that an advertisement for their original product, tree bags, in a California Nurseryman's magazine. And under this little tiny eighth of a page advertisement, it said, aerates the root zone, releases heat, never have a root-bound plant. And I was like, oh, that's smart. So I called the company, and they sent me some samples, asked if I was growing tomatoes, kind of laughed at me and such. But they sent me out various samples and sizes, which I I tried some indoors, I tried some outdoors, and I thought to myself, I was like, hey, this is a really good idea that hasn't been used in the cannabis industry.
You're pretty well known for growing super large cannabis plants. What's the largest plant that you've ever grown size-wise and yield-wise?
Well, there's a point in time in California where you were allowed to grow medically only so many plants. If you can only have 25 plants in your backyard, how about grow the biggest plants that you can? Mm-hmm. So we first people who were doing this were digging gigantic holes and putting yards and yards of soils in each hole, because the more root, the more fruit. So after I discovered what people were doing, and that's the reason why I moved to Covelo, is I saw these huge trees being grown. I've found a little technique with smart pots above the ground, but slightly in these old holes that we used to use. So we'd have above ground and a below ground root growth.
Okay.
And the biggest plant I ever grew was 17 plus pounds. It was a monster, and the strain is Candy Apple, a strain I developed in Mendocino County around 2000, 2009 or so. And yeah, 17 plus pounds on one plant.
How big was the container? Do you remember?
It was, I believe it was just a 200 gallon, but it was sitting on top of a hole that held multiple yards of soil.
Yeah, and for those that don't know, I would say that's like really the ultimate secret weapon to growing in smart pots outdoors, is like a combo of smart pot and in-ground growing, because they're just getting so much aeration from the smart pot, but then they get the grounding effect from just being in touch with the earth. And then if the roots want to penetrate and explore, they can, and they just do their thing.
Well, getting that taproot to go as deep as possible is key. So if the smart pot's in direct contact with the ground or an easy soil to travel through, that taproot will keep going.
Would you say that that's more important with plants from seed, or would it also work from clone as well?
Taproot is a seed thing.
Yeah.
So that getting that downward taproot, that is usually generated by a seed. Clones are already in a medium like a Rockwell or stuff, so they don't have a taproot. They're already pruned out and with laterals.
Right. Awesome. So then, after you kind of started using smart pots, you kind of also transitioned into becoming really the first rep for the cannabis industry. How did that all come about? And then how did you find like the other reps who you were working with, like Paul and Helene and that crew?
Throughout the, after I used the product in 2007, I called him up in 2008 and told him I would like a job representing their product. And they kind of giggled at me, for your California tomatoes. And I was already throughout the growing industry a little bit. I was selling compost tea, a couple other products, and I had a string full of stores from Mendocino County and Humboldt County down through Santa Cruz area. So I already had established accounts. I saw the need for the product. I invested in a pallet right off the bat, and told them, hey, like I will work for commission on paid sales. I see a need for this in the market. I went and met Kurt Rieger at NorCal Trade Show in San Mateo, I believe, and we hung out at a show, and I told him what I thought I could do with the product, and they decided to give me a shot and take me on as a commission sales rep. And I immediately went to work that year. I think it was January, right around January 20th in 2008. And I immediately hit the road and started selling the pots throughout. All my other reps that I met came from some sort of the industry along the trails. My first rep that I hired, Jonathan, he had worked with Advanced Nutrients and Humboldt Nutrients, and everybody I met was pretty much, almost everybody was involved in the industry, and I met along, and they joined the team through other companies,
Yeah, awesome. And, kind of getting into your cultivation style, do you have a favorite growing method? Soil, cocoa, hydro. I know Smart Pots is kind of like it's almost like a hybrid because you can really kind of run it like a hydro system, depending on, what kind of medium you're using. What do you like to do, these days?
Well, these days I'm using kind of a hybrid system. I'm using a peat moss and cocoa base, and 5-gallon smart pots, and I do drain to waste. So, but I also amend all my medium with organics and earthworm castings and chicken scratch and fish and seaweed. And I blend it all up and kind of let it heat. So I'm not fully organic, but I have a good living soil organic base. And then we still use some minerals that I feel are safe and healthy for the plants and consumption of the plants.
Yeah.
So we run that through on just a drain to waste system instead of recycling. So it's not quite soil, it's not quite hydro. But it's a hybrid system.
How many times are you watering your plants a day?
At least twice.
Okay.
Yeah, so there's some movement going through.
Yeah,
there.
nice. I'd say, if you're watering your plants at least a couple times a day, you're basically a hydro grower, no matter what your medium is. What do you think is the biggest selling point for a cannabis grower to be using a smart pot versus a plastic nursery pot?
Just the improvement of the root zone and root zone health. You have a healthy root zone, you have a healthy plant. So the aeration and the root pruning. The cannabis plant is a fast-growing annual, like a giant pumpkin or a sunflower. If they get stunted in their growth whatsoever, you don't get the same results.
Right.
So I would say the aeration and the air pruning is the biggest benefit. For outdoor growers, also the heat. Heat can be a real root killer. So
yeah. Have you grown in black smart pots and tan smart pots outdoors?
I've done both.
Yeah. Growers who grow outdoors, they swear by the heat difference in tan versus black. What do you say?
I've measured the temperature, and there is a little bit of difference in extremely hot climates. The tan definitely helps a little bit. In cooler climates, the people I find like the black better. It's finding your region in the happy medium.
That makes sense because the black fabric would warm up quicker, which would extend your growing season, early and late. So that makes sense. Awesome. So kind of getting into green cleaner. If nobody's heard of that, it's a plant wash that is good for pests and disease. How did your involvement with that come about? And I guess kind of tell that story for us.
I found that product in the Salinas Valley, and it was being used as a product to help eliminate the buildup cycle of pests that weren't dying by standard chemicals. And kind of the same thing, mom and pop company, they were making the product at home, didn't have much of a sales team. I found the product, it worked really well. I applied that product to my sales team that were out on the road as well. And it became a success. It became a smash hit.
Yeah, it seemed like Green Cleaner really took off like overnight, and I'm sure the network that you had, already kind of built up from, the Smart Pod sales really just kind of launched that like a rocket ship.
Yeah, distribution network, the network of stores that me and my crew had already visiting, and that point in the market, we had to work 7 days a week back then. There was a customer appreciation day every weekend in every town. So we were always somewhere, and we sampled. And once people got their hands on the samples and it worked for them, it really picked up. And
yeah, I always say, anything that's worth doing doesn't come easy, and success doesn't happen overnight. And Green Cleaner was an overnight success, but that's due to all the hard work that you guys put in before that.
There was a couple years of hard work to make it happen.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely.
There was definitely a lot of grind in that.
Absolutely. So now I wanted to talk about High Country Genetics. How was that formed, and what are you specializing in? What's going on with that?
That was formed as a name for my breeding projects and the strains that I was establishing. So I established that as a base company for creating cannabis strains. And as of now, we have our limited exclusive strains in legal and medical states, and our goal is to keep promoting. With other, we bring distributors, retailers, growers together with some really exotic stuff that nobody else has, and heirloom varieties.
What's like your favorite strain that you guys have done or that you're doing currently?
The candy apple I was talking about earlier is always a staple. There's been a couple amazing ones. The pineapple preserve has been extremely, extremely wonderful. Boss Hog, really good OG cross, has been phenomenal as well.
Nice.
I've put out a very limited amount of strains because I wanted to be able to focus on those and get those out to the consumer.
Nice. The first time I ever met Dusty was at a customer appreciation event at NHS, I think in Fortuna. And he just comes up to me and he says, "Hey, you smoke?" He pulls out this bag. "Check out this pineapple. I grew this." And oh man, hooks me up with some, and I think we've been friends ever since that. So
sharing cannabis is my favorite thing to do. It brings people together, it brings joy to everyone, and
a friend with weed is a friend indeed. I always
absolutely
say. So you've since moved from California out to Oklahoma City. What are you doing out here? And heard you got a grow operation, and we're here at your dispensary.
I'm just following the career path that cannabis has led me down. Obviously, markets change and environments change, and me working for Smart Pots for over 10 years, I kind of watched things change. And when they decided to go medical and the laws look good, I said, "Hey, let's bring what I've learned, over the years out to a new spot and see how it goes."
Yeah. Was there a reason why you chose Oklahoma over staying in California?
Well, the cost of living, and just
more liberal cannabis laws, and
for now
less
they are
onerous taxes.
For now they are.
Yeah.
California's recreational market definitely changed the way people are able to do things out here, and just following where the plant leads me.
Well, it seems like Oklahoma has done pretty well, kind of having a more of a laissez-faire attitude towards cannabis. So hopefully, when it eventually goes recreational, they don't totally mess up the market like California did.
Well, we'll see what happens.
Kind of along those lines, where do you think the future of cannabis is headed?
Eventually, eventually it'll go federally legal, I believe. And that'll be good because people need to quit being incarcerated for having cannabis. I mean, this is a product that God created, and it's here for us. And this is an answer to a lot of medical problems and a lot of good, problems with the planet. Growing hemp, growing cannabis rejuvenates the soil, rejuvenates our minds, rejuvenates our souls. Let's let this medicine roll out.
Yeah, I fully agree. I think, all usage is medicinal, whether you're using it for, physical pain or, PTSD or, just anti-anxiety. I know that's how it really helps me is anxiety issues. So I guess any last words of advice to, the beginner grower or somebody who's just kind of growing their first plant?
Love the plant. Don't give up. Do your homework, and just let the plant take you where it wants to take you.
Awesome. Well, on that note, thank you so much for your time today, and looking forward to following your progress with the dispensary and the grow.
All right.